Hello everyone and welcome back to TJA Economics. Today we're going to be looking at price elasticity of demand, PED, and then we're going to be looking at how we can actually use it in our economics and our analysis. So let's start with the definition then. PED, a measurement of the sensitivity of demand or quantity demanded in response to a change in price. And like I say, it's a measure of the sensitivity of demand in response to a change in price. But what does that actually mean? It means, as you might have guessed in economics, when the price of a good or service changes, we would expect, based on the shape of the demand curve, that the quantity demanded is going to change too. However, what we don't know is the extent to which that QD is going to change. We know more or less that when price goes up, QD will go down. We know that when price goes down, QD will go up. But what we don't know is that flashing item there. We don't know how big the change in QD is going to be. And that's what price elasticity of demand lets us see. So we have a formula for PED. It's the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Or we can express it like this. Either one's fine. In an exam, they will not mind. Percentage change in quantity demanded, or you can do the small formulaic version. So let's do an example then. There's my formula, and here are some stats. So here's my demand curve, and let's say we start with a price of 100 and a quantity of 100. If the price then falls to £40 and my quantity goes up to 280, what does that mean? It means that my percentage change in QD, we've gone up by 180%, and my price has fallen by 60%. And so that means that the PED for this good or service is -3. And now when we talk about PED should always spit out a negative value. In truth, it doesn't really matter whether you write it positive or negative, because as we say, it always is negative. And so PED is sometimes explained using positive integers, sometimes with negative integers. It doesn't really matter. It's the number that matters, because each individual PED value has a different name and explanation. For example, if you have a PED of 0, it means that it's perfectly inelastic demand. No matter how much the price changes, I'm going to buy the exact same amount. It then moves up between 0 and 1. It's inelastic. It means that if the price goes up, you will reduce your consumption, but only by a little bit. If PED is equal to 1, it's unit elastic. It means that if the price goes up, you will buy a similar amount less. Your QD will fall. And then if PED is greater than 1, as it was in our example, it means that if the price rises, you will buy a much smaller amount. You're going to cut down your consumption a lot. And then if PED is infinite, it means that if the price changes at all, you'll stop buying it. So with that in mind, like I say, we can take our PED value from earlier, and that would be elastic because it is above 1. So here are some examples then. Here is the demand curve for a perfectly inelastic product, or a product with perfectly inelastic demand. As you can see, it's a straight line, and that's because no matter what the price, I will still buy it. We then have an inelastic demand curve. You can see it's not straight anymore, but it is quite steep. And that, of course, means that if the price goes up, I'll continue buying it, but I'll cut down a little bit. Next up then, we have a unit elastic demand curve. It's actually 45 degrees on this one, and that's because if the price goes up, I will reduce my consumption by the same amount. And then after unit elastic, we have elastic. You can see it's quite shallow, it's nearly flat, and that is because the consumption is going to change a lot with price. That's elastic demand. And then last up, we have perfectly elastic demand. As we said, if price goes up or down at all, I'll just stop buying it. And so here we have our 5 demand curves, and as we go from left to right, we are becoming increasingly elastic. So on the left-hand side, we have perfectly inelastic, and then we move up through the values until we get to perfectly elastic on the right-hand side. But how do we actually use it? That's one of the questions I often get. Is PED is very, very good. It's quite an interesting piece to look at, but how can we actually use it in our work and apply it in our essays? I've come up with 4 ways, 4 quite easy ways. Firstly, assessing the effectiveness of microeconomic policies such as subsidies and indirect taxes. You could also do maximum minimum prices. You can look at revenue maximising firms and whether they should lower or raise their prices. We can look at the Marshall-Lerner condition, which is more of a year 13 macro topic, but again, it's very useful. And then, of course, price discrimination, which is a year 13 micro content. So let's have a look through then. So first up then, let's look at the micro policies one. As you can see, on this diagram, I've got a supply and demand curve. My demand curve, you'll remember from earlier, is very inelastic. And what we're saying is that, say, for example, we levy an indirect tax on this product. you can see the price goes up significantly, but the quantity doesn't go up by quite as much, and we have a significant amount of tax revenue. However, you can see on this diagram on the right-hand side that the demand curve is far more elastic, far more shallow, and therefore if we have a similar change in supply, i.e. a similar tax, you'll see the price doesn't go up by as much, but the quantity falls by far more, and we have much less tax revenue. So we can use this to assess and evaluate the effectiveness of policies. For example, if you're taxing a product that has inelastic demand, you're not going to reduce consumption by much, but you are going to increase price and you are going to get a lot of tax revenue in doing that. And so it depends on what your objective is. If you're taxing a product to raise tax revenue, that's great if it's got inelastic demand. But if you're taxing a product because you want to reduce consumption of it, it's not going to be as effective. And so you can use this to evaluate different policies in microeconomics. As we say here, if we have inelastic demand, a small change in QD, but large changes in price and tax revenue. And if we have elastic demand, there'll be large changes in QD, but small changes in price and tax revenue. So the next one up then, revenue maximizing firms. And so I talk about revenue maximizing firms because we can look at the price that a firm sets. For example, if a firm knows that it has an inelastic demand curve, it will raise its price, right? Because we'll get this big increase in revenue. That green box there is the revenue they gain by increasing their price. And they only lose that little red box. And so in all, if a firm knows it has inelastic demand, it should raise its price in order to maximize revenue. However, if we have an elastic demand curve and a firm raises its price, they only gain that little green box there and they lose that big red box. And so we can say that if a firm has inelastic demand, they should raise their price to increase revenue. And if they have elastic demand, they should lower their price to increase revenue. Next up then, we're going to look at the Marshall-Lerner condition, quite a useful tool for analysing macroeconomics in year 12 and 13 if you can do it. And we say, if the combined PED of your exports and imports is greater than 1, a currency depreciation will improve your current account. So we've got a table here. For country 1, the PED of their exports and imports is 0.9. That means that if their currency depreciates, their current account will get worse. However, for country 2, their combined PED is 2.1, which means it will get better. And for country 3, the combined PED is 1, which means there'll be no change. This is important. If you're analysing the impact of a devaluation or depreciation on a country like the UK that imports and exports a lot of luxury products, they're likely to have elastic PEDs, and therefore a devaluation of the currency should improve it. However, maybe a country that is developing or exports a lot of primary products, they're going to have quite inelastic PEDs for their product. That might mean that a devaluation won't help. And so you can start to really apply your analysis using PED and really impress the examiners. You can say, look, I'm looking at what this country is importing and exporting. I'm applying my knowledge of PED and using the Marshall-Lerner condition to state whether a depreciation is going to help or not. Again, another really useful application of PED. And then lastly, price discrimination. Again, this is year 13 micro. And as we can see here, we've got two consumers and we've got the whole market on the right hand side. And as you can see, because consumer A and consumer B have different PEDs, it means we're able to charge them a different price. And so a firm is able to maximize revenue and get more revenue by charging consumer A and consumer B a different price. However, again, why does this involve PED? It's because the firm is able to segment its consumers into different groups based upon the PEDs. And because of that, it can charge them a different price for its products and therefore maximize revenues and profits. So there you go. 4 good applications of PED that will look really good if you can work them into your analysis and evaluation. So a summary then. PED shows us by how much QD will change if there is a change in price and vice versa, the other way around. PED can be perfectly elastic, inelastic, unit elastic, elastic, and perfectly elastic. Each of these labels has a PED value, and as you can see there, will affect how steep the demand curve is. It's a very useful tool for micro and macro. It is quite a simple concept to get your head around, but using it in your analysis and your evaluation is quite an easy way to beef up your analysis, add depth, and impress the examiners. So, If you've enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates whenever I upload. I'm going to be putting a lot more stuff up this year. Also do follow me on Instagram and Twitter, TJA Economics on both of those platforms. And like I say, leave a comment with anything you'd like me to do, and I'll see you next time.